Uh, when I say read, I mean studied. Uh, the interesting thing about this book is it's called The Elements of Style, but the title of the book is something of a misnomer because what it really teaches is something adverse to everyone who might aspire to be an author, and that is it teaches that style is, uh, in truth, uh, it's not the context of communication. It's really teaching to eliminate style. Most people who probably fancy at some point in their life, you know, for the first time in their life, that they might be an author, or that being an author might um, be a realization of their dreams, or the dreams of others through their work, or whatever their motives might be. Generally, I think why this book has the title it has is that people think that they have a style of communication, which is what counts. But what the book is really about is that it's not the style at all, that there is no style, that in truth, writing, speaking, whatever, is in truth the art of the mechanics of using the language. And so it's about never using a dime word when a nickel word will do. It's about sentence structure. It's about conducive sentence length, etc. All the fundaments of communication. The funny thing is when I got this book, uh, I was already applying its principles, which is something that we just get better at to some degree, which may not be very much. A little often makes a tremendous difference in the quality of the output. Although, in truth, it may not even be further skill that improves the output, but 50 more passes through the same paragraph, which continually revise the form of each of its sentences, and then realize that a certain thought needed to be placed up earlier in the things that were communicated, and the order was revised, and this reflected upon all the expressions. So they were changed, and they're changed, and they're changed. Well, these friends of mine, they thought that I just couldn't get over being what they called generally too wordy. And that itself was something of a cop out. Of course, we understand what that can often mean, but one day many of these authors who were criticizing my work all the time, and I were together with some other people who had read my work and all, and I offered myself up to their teaching, their refinement. You've been saying this, I said, but show me exactly what you mean. Let's just take a paragraph of my work and refine it into some form that you're pushing me toward, but you're ambiguously defining the object. You're asserting that I haven't complied with these rules in this book, The Elements of Style, for instance. Show me that I'm not. Show me how you would revise my work to be in more perfect compliance. And so we, all of us, sat down. They insisted we take a good paragraph of my work that was something that delivered the most information in the least, terms, and really got at the whole heart of the matter, and let's hammer it out. Let's make this a group project and perfect one of Mike's paragraphs. So we sat down, and this sentence was like, or paragraph was like a 200-word sentence and a 50-word sentence. And, just about any author's eyebrows would go up in the middle of their forehead and say what? And the first thing that my friend said, well, your average sentence length should be, 8, 10, 12 words. Keep it short. Keep it simple, stupid. We use this KISS acronym in software engineering and in writing as well. Keep it simple, stupid. And so that's their first remark. My sentences are too long. Well, of course, then I know that. I mean, I'm checking my grammar in Microsoft Word, and it's telling my sentences are way long, but there's a reason that they are. And my friends are about finally to discover it. So, okay, they say my sentences are too long. We have a 200-word sentence, and they said, well, break that up into 10-word chunks. All right, fine. Here's a pen. You put the periods or the semicolons or whatever, where they go. You break that 200-word sentence up. And so they began to do this, and everywhere they put a period, they realized they had to put in a noun that had been descended from the previous expression of what was now the previous sentence. It had to be raised again in the second sentence somehow, at least implicitly, which required some further words and or rewording. And before you know it, that one 200-word sentence grew into paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, the way that they were trying to communicate it. And finally they said, after hours, they said, how in the hell did you do this? They couldn't realize, they couldn't understand how I had actually taken all that I had and dissolved it into 200 words, which was a marvel. In truth, the complicated ideas, which were perfectly related to each other, without possible aberration in understanding, and when they tried to mess with this and reduce it further, instead it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. What's worse, it became repetitive in the elimination of some of its incumbent terminology. It grew tremendously in wordiness, which was the very thing that they were trying to eliminate from it. And what happened was, after hours and hours and hours of cold, deliberate attempts to re-engineer this crucial paragraph, they realized that I had done something which was actually remarkable. They just simply reacted to a simple property of the sentence that it had 200 words, as if it was a bad expression somehow because it was 200 words. But when they tried to take it apart and refine it, they found it grew phenomenally in size and became relatively incomprehensible. By the time you restated all the nouns that didn't exist, except in special terms that I created because they needed to be created, like interest-bearing debt, I mean, I introduced these terms. I actually had that term thrown at me by Ellen Hodgson Brown. She found a case of its usage in something like 1920 in some report in which there isn't even any obvious reason for that particular expression. What it amounted to, I have no idea. In fact, I don't even know if the document would be authentic, you know. But anyway, I'd never heard the words interest-bearing debt before. I conjured them up as an explicit expression of exactly what I wanted to say, which didn't require definition. Interest-bearing debt, a debt bearing interest, a debt subject to interest, a self-explanatory term. Anyway, they tried to remove these things, just assuming that, you know, there would be more understandable expressions. And they found, when you read what they eventually produced, no one, you know, it was terrible. It was garbage. It was junk. And I often end up explaining this to people, and I'm not meaning to talk about myself. What I'm talking about is what we need to realize so that we can effectively communicate with each other so that we succeed in solving one of the most important and vital problems in history. You know, this obfuscation of the currency. If we think money is created out of nothing, we're so far from where we need to be that we're hopeless. That's hopeless. We can all run around like chickens with our heads cut off, claiming money's created out of nothing and there's an excess of money just because they're pouring money into circulation, not even accounting for what we're paying out in the way of principal and interest on this terminal sum of debt that we're suffering. You know, we can cry out money's created out of nothing all we want forever, and we're never going anywhere. Never are we going anywhere until we grow up beyond that. What I'm getting at here is I've had groups all through time. In the early 90s, I had a group of teachers from Alaska, professors and high school teachers, who volunteered collectively to revise my work, to dumb it down for the masses. And we ended up working together for something like 6 months on just one article of my web pages. And that article became stripped of its impact, its meaning, its implications, to such an extent that personally I had no faith that it would accomplish its purposes any further. All that really had been done to it was it had been stripped of any challenging term, which had been replaced with a term which was less applicable or appropriate, and so on and so forth. What's worse is we spent 6 months just refining an article that already existed, which had already been authored, which I had already labored over, you know. And it was converted from what I wanted it to say into something which was wrong, that you would have to cover later in further lecturing or written work or whatever. So what happened out of this is that I threw in the towel on it. I couldn't work that way. I couldn't be hamstrung by 20 people who are obviously they were well-meaning, very, very well-meaning, the highest, you know, goals. And they were fit teachers of English and communication. But I didn't realize at the time what was really wrong with what we were trying to do. And that's where I'm going with this. Several years later, better than half a dozen years later, I had a very substantial church. Number of people wanted to likewise refine my work, dumb it down for the masses. And what happened was I tired